This happened in Colorado recently. Back in the 90s when I was still a teenager in the middle of winter, my family and I lived in a cabin deep in the woods. When I say deep in the woods, I mean the nearest store or house was at least a 30-minute drive from our cabin, maybe around 10:30 p.m., and my dad worked the night shift, so it was just me and my mom. It was just a regular night until everything started to go very wrong. You finished dinner, and my mom was cleaning the table and she asked me to do the dishes, so of course I was the one washing them. I was waiting for the water to get warm when I noticed a faint light reflecting on my pants through the window, and the lights went out, making it very hard to see. But I could make out what looked like a face, and whoever or whatever it was staring at me. I was really startled, but I wiped the fog off the window with a cloth to try and see better. As I moved the cloth away from the window, there was a very bright light shining at me. I squinted and looked towards it, then looked away for a moment because it was kind of hurting my eyes. Then suddenly the light went out, but I could see whoever was out there staring at me silently from a distance. Then my mom finished putting the rest of the dishes in the sink, and I immediately got out of there. I backed away from the window, and my mom asked me what was wrong, telling her what had just happened, that there was someone outside staring at me, and they were shining a flashlight at our window. At first, she seemed incredulous, but I convinced her that I was serious, and how confused I was as to how she didn't notice the flashlight when whoever it was shining it on me, she must have been facing away or something. According to my mom, I was just joking, so she didn't even bother to look when I felt safe enough to do so. So I walked back to the window and looked out. There was nothing there. They were gone, which made me feel a little relieved. But then suddenly the doorknob started creaking as someone tried to turn the doorknob to open it. My mom screamed, and we both grabbed a small kitchen knife. Then they started pulling the door even harder and also kicking the door, and it was clear that they were clearly trying to break in. But we were very lucky because my dad showed up just in time. Apparently my dad's boss let him come home from work early that night, and if it weren't for that, I think my mom and I would have died. I'll tell you why in a bit here. Once my dad stopped in the driveway, the man let go of my dad without showing any mercy. My dad actually shot him with his Glock 19 5 times and hit every shot, and the man died within minutes after we were sure he was dead. My dad took all of us to the police station so we could make a report and give them our side of the story. My dad went unpunished and didn't go to jail. There was no problem seen clearly when the police arrived at the scene that it was an act of self-defense. The man was on our property trying to break in and also had a gun in his pants that he was hiding, along with a very sharp and long 6-inch knife. He also had a stick and handcuffs. I really don't like to think about what his plan was because it really disturbs me. I'm just glad my dad showed up and did what he did before something happened. We eventually moved out of that cabin a few months later to a house that my dad and some of his friends helped build for us. I lived there for about 6 years with them, until I got my own place with my girlfriend out of town. We have our own apartment, and everything has been fine since then. But this is a story I always tell from time to time. ChatGPT. This happened when I was 15 years old, more than 3 years ago. My friend and I used to play hide and seek in the dark outside at night, and we could hide wherever we wanted to. Nothing was really off limits to hide in. However, we were usually wise enough not to run too far because we never really wanted to do that. This time though, when my friend Alex was the seeker and I was supposed to hide, I got a bit carried away and ran into the woods because I thought it would be funny and make the game more exciting since I knew he would take longer to find me because we had never really played in the woods before. I searched for a hiding spot and found an old cabin that looked like the door had been left when I got closer. I noticed that the front door was wide open. I thought it was very strange, but I still sneaked in. I was cautious because I wasn't sure if there would be anyone in there or not. I mean, just because it looked abandoned didn't mean there wouldn't be anyone inside. I took that risk, even though I truly felt in my heart that everything would be okay. I found my way to one of the bedrooms, and I waited for about 10 minutes, and I started to feel very bored. I didn't expect hiding here would make me bored to death. So as I was about to reveal myself or find another hiding spot, I peeked out the window. I saw the silhouette of a person heading towards me. I wasn't sure if Alex could see me, but I ducked below the window just in case he saw me. I held my breath and tried as hard as I could not to move a muscle so that I wouldn't move or make a sound. I then started to hear him getting closer. You could hear the sound of branches and leaves under his feet crunching with each step he took, until it sounded like he was right next to the window. Then suddenly, out of nowhere, I heard the loudest thud I've ever heard in my life. I practically screamed as the jump scared me so much. I was actually kind of annoyed, and I didn't find it funny at all because Alex was playing me like that. He banged on the window 4 or 5 times, but by the time I peeked my head up, he was already gone. I then started calling out Alex's name and told him that I didn't think any of this was funny. But then, out of nowhere, I heard someone breaking through the front door, and they were heading towards me. I made sure to close the front door behind me as I walked in, making me even more frightened. Every footstep got louder as he got closer to me. I could hear every step very clearly on the hard wooden floor, and he was really scaring me because I started wondering if it was even Alex. I looked out the window again, and I saw someone with a flashlight. That's when I jumped like a truck. Whoever was in the cabin with me surely wasn't Alex because Alex was standing right in front of me. I opened the window so fast, and I jumped out of there, not even caring how I landed. I managed to land on my feet, though, without hurting myself, and Alex aimed his flashlight at me. I wasted no time at all, and I ran all the way home. I yelled at Alex and told him to follow me, and that there was a guy in the cabin that I was hiding in. I wasn't sure if he was a random person, or if he owned it, but I didn't care. I left. Alex thought I was playing a prank on him at first. I believed it because it took him a moment before he started running with me. Alex then confirmed that he thought I was joking at first, until he saw the man staring out the same window where I was hiding in the room. The man stuck his head out of the window and stared at him. I told Alex everything that happened as soon as we got back to my place, and we didn't tell my parents at all. Alex believed everything I said because he had no reason not to. We didn't tell my parents because technically I might have been wrong. I shouldn't have even been hiding in that cabin in the first place. I really learned my lesson and haven't done anything stupid like that since, believe it or not. I was just lucky that nothing bad happened, and I got away without getting hurt. One night, I was out for a late-night stroll, and I stumbled upon a footpath that I never knew existed. I often go for walks, mostly around my neighborhood. Sometimes I like to explore different areas that I've never seen before, a few miles away from my home. There's a nice park nearby that I sometimes visit. Sometimes the park is quite extensive, and I'm sure there are more footpaths than I know of. As I was walking, I noticed the opening of a footpath that I had never seen before. It really caught my attention. I knew I was exploring a new trail. It was already late at night, probably just after 7 o'clock, and because of that, I really didn't plan to go too far. The park has a curfew, and besides, I didn't really want to be in the woods alone late at night. After a while of walking, I veered off the footpath and started exploring a completely new area. I must have walked for over a mile, and that's when I realized it might be time to turn around, wander around, and head back. I lost track of time minute by minute, and I really didn't want to get lost out there. But before I turned back, I spotted a cabin to my left in the distance. I don't know why or what prompted me to walk towards the cabin to get a better look, but I'm really glad I did. However, this night was the scariest night of my life, and what happened was something straight out of a horror movie. As I approached the cabin, I could feel it. It was darker outside, and in the back of my mind, I was thinking that I should leave, but something inside me was so drawn to that cabin. I started wondering how far I had walked, because I thought I must be on private property by now. The park I'm talking about, it's not a campground or anything, it's just a park. Now I've been to this park since I was a kid. I never knew there was a cabin here. That was the last thing I expected to see at first glance. I didn't know if it was occupied or what had happened to it, because it seemed like it hadn't been maintained for years. I walked around the cabin, while keeping a distance of at least 20 feet to be cautious if there was anyone inside or around the area. Out of nowhere, though, I heard a very loud noise that sounded like someone banging on something. It scared me at first, and I almost ran away, but I decided to take a few steps closer to try and figure out where it was coming from. I walked to the back of the cabin, and I saw a girl about my age in the basement of the cabin banging on the window and screaming for help. I could barely understand what she was saying, but I got the gist of it. I could tell right away that something was very wrong. I immediately ran towards her, and I tried to open the window. But then she looked at me with an even more terrified look in her eyes, and she brought her fingers to her mouth. I quickly realized what she was saying. She was telling me to be quiet. I realized that I wouldn't understand. The window was open, and I also realized that I had to act fast, so I took out my phone to call the police. But I didn't get any service. My heart started pounding because I didn't know what to do. I tried to get as close to the window as possible, and I wrote on my phone in my notes app, and I asked if she was in danger, and she shook her head yes. Then I asked if she knew if there was anyone else in the cabin, or around the property at the time, but she shrugged, implying that she didn't know. I told her that I would get her out of there and to stay calm. I ran to the front of the cabin, and as slowly as possible, I tried to open the front door. Of course, it was locked, but at least I had to try. Then I walked around the entire perimeter of the cabin, and I tried to open every window, but they were all locked too. My heart started beating faster and faster. As time passed, my anxiety peaked because I really didn't know what to do. I ran around the woods and searched for something I could use to break one of the windows. After a few minutes, I found a pretty big rock that I thought would do the job. I ran back to the girl and showed her the rock. I told her to step back so I could try to break the open window. I then threw the rock as hard as I could at the window, and it shattered the glass completely. She immediately jumped, and I grabbed her hand to try to pull her out, but it didn't work because the window was too small for her to fit through. That's when I did something unthinkable. I faced my fear head on. I went to the side of the cabin and smashed one of the main windows with the same rock. I peeked my head in slightly to make sure there was no one in there that I didn't like. I didn't see anyone. I then jumped through the window as fast as I could and grabbed a knife from the kitchen area to be cautious. I then thoroughly investigated every room, and it seemed like there was no one else there. I rushed to the basement and found a girl. Someone trapped there alone in a cage measuring 5 by 8 feet. She was half naked and had many bruises all over her body, as well as old scars and dried blood, and there was a man holding her there, starving her to death and physically, emotionally, and even sexually abusing her. She even told me that the man had forced her to consume illegal drugs like LSD and methamphetamine in unreasonable amounts. Then she looked around the basement trying to find something I could unlock the door with it being outside the door. I finally found a sledgehammer, and I took it, and I was able to unlock the door with it. I immediately ran to the girl. She was so dehydrated and hungry that she could barely even walk. I brought her upstairs, and I put a pair of shoes on her that I found at the front door, and I helped her put them on. She moved as fast as we could, and we headed straight from my car. We had walked a long way, so it would take quite a while, especially with her limping, and I had to carry her as we walked along the front porch. We heard a car in the distance at this point. The day was starting to darken, and we could hardly see. But Emily, the girl I saved, said that it was likely the man you kidnapped. I didn't want to challenge him or find out for myself, so we kept walking. He's getting closer to us now, and we have to move quickly. Otherwise, he'll see us. We moved as fast as our legs would allow us, remembering the situation, and luckily, he didn't see us. We had long disappeared even before he got to the cabin. I don't know how long it took for him to realize that Emily had escaped, but we managed to never see him again after that. I took Emily to the hospital and she told the police everything she knew about the man and what happened to her. I sat at the hospital with her for a while, and I'm sure she'll be okay. Okay, I never really got a chance to make a proper statement to the police, and I don't know where Emily is now, but I think she's much better. This was over 2 years ago, so hopefully she'll recover from everything that happened to her and find peace. As for me, I still experience nightmares of what I saw that night and what happened. I wish I knew more about its effects, and if the man was ever caught, but I didn't do it that week. My husband and I are in the process of moving abroad, and a lot has happened to us. The man could still be out there, doing who knows what.